Disclaimer: this content is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised. The rain had barely stopped when I walked into the house that night. The scent of wet earth drifted through the half-open window, mixing with the faint aroma of dinner that had gone cold. The lights in the kitchen flickered softly, casting long, golden shadows on the dining table, where everything between us would soon change. He was already there, leaning against the counter, sleeves rolled up, eyes following me with that quiet, unreadable expression. It wasn't anger. It wasn't desire either, or maybe it was both, twisted into something unspoken. The air between us was thick enough to taste. I remember setting my bag down, pretending not to feel his gaze tracing every slow step I took toward him. We hadn't seen each other in weeks. Too many words had been left unsaid, messages ignored, calls missed, promises broken. But that night, silence said everything. When I finally met his eyes, it felt like standing on the edge of something dangerous, something I wasn't sure I could walk away from once I fell. He didn't say a word. Instead, he reached out, his hand brushing against mine, just enough to make my pulse stutter. There was something raw in the way he looked at me, like he was searching for the person I used to be, the one he once knew. I wanted to ask him why he was there, why he still cared, why he couldn't just let me go. But my voice stayed trapped somewhere in my chest. And then, everything shifted. The space between us disappeared in a heartbeat. The table that had always been just another piece of furniture suddenly became a place where every hidden feeling surfaced, where restraint didn't stand a chance. The sound of plates clinking faintly, the rush of breath, the sharp edge of longing that neither of us could fight, it was all a blur of emotion and confusion. But right when it felt like the world had narrowed down to that one heartbeat, he stopped. His hand lingered near my face, trembling slightly, as if he was holding back something heavier than desire. The question in his eyes wasn't "Do you want this?" but "Are you ready for what comes after?" The silence that followed was deafening. The only sound was the soft tap of rain returning against the windowpane. We both knew that whatever happened next would change everything, for better or worse. What would you have done if you were standing there, between what feels right and what feels inevitable? Would you have stopped him? Or let the moment pull you in deeper? Tell me in the comments below, what do you think happens next? Vote in the poll: should she walk away, or let her heart decide? The rain outside turned steady, tapping softly against the glass, as if echoing the rhythm of our silence. He still hadn't moved. Neither had I. The space between us felt heavy with all the things we weren't saying. It wasn't just attraction, it was everything that had been buried under months of distance and misunderstanding. I finally looked away, pretending to fix the corner of the tablecloth, though my hands were shaking. "You shouldn't have come," I said quietly. The words sounded weak, even to me. He gave a small, almost sad smile. "You said that last time too." His voice was lower than I remembered, tired but steady. The kind of tone that carried too many memories. I wanted to ask him how he'd found the courage to show up again after everything that had happened. After that night when he walked away without a word, leaving me wondering if it was really over. Instead, I said nothing. The truth was, I wasn't ready for answers. Maybe he wasn't either. He stepped closer, his shoes brushing against the edge of the rug. The faint scent of rain clung to his clothes. "You still keep the same perfume," he said, almost to himself. "Vanilla and something else I can never name." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The way he said it, it wasn't just about the scent. It was about everything familiar he missed but couldn't admit. For a moment, the room felt smaller. The ticking clock grew louder, the world outside quieter. I tried to focus on anything else: the cold coffee mug, the dim light, the storm beyond the window. But my eyes kept finding him. Every small movement, every breath, felt like it carried weight. "Why are you really here?" I finally asked. My voice came out softer than I intended. He looked at me, and for a second, I saw the same conflict in his eyes that lived in mine, wanting to stay, but knowing he shouldn't. Because I couldn't stop thinking about what I left behind, he said. About you. The words hit harder than I expected. My chest tightened, and I didn't know what to do with the flood of emotions that followed. I wanted to believe him, but part of me still remembered the silence that followed his absence, the unanswered calls, the sleepless nights, the ache that never really faded. He reached out, as if to touch my hand, but stopped halfway. His hesitation said everything. Whatever he was feeling wasn't simple. And neither was mine. Outside, lightning flashed, lighting up his face for just a second. There was something unreadable in his expression, regret, maybe, or something deeper. And just when I thought he was about to speak again, the lights flickered once more and went out completely. Darkness filled the room. I felt his breath close to mine, his voice a whisper in the dark, I need to tell you the truth, before it's too late. The power cut left the room completely dark. Only the soft hum of rain filled the air, along with the uneven rhythm of our breathing. I could barely see him, but I could feel his presence, close, restless, uncertain. His voice came again, low but firm. There's something you need to know, something I should have told you months ago. My heart pounded. Every word he said seemed to hang between us like a storm waiting to break. Then tell me, I whispered, though part of me wasn't sure I wanted to hear it. He hesitated. I could hear him take a slow breath. I didn't leave because I wanted to, he said. I left because someone told me to. Someone who said staying would destroy everything. Those words hit like cold water. I turned toward the faint outline of his face, confusion running through me. Who would say that? He didn't answer right away. The silence stretched too long, too heavy. Outside, thunder rolled over the hills. It doesn't matter, he finally said. What matters is that it wasn't my choice. Something inside me twisted. I thought of the last night we were together, the look in his eyes before he walked out, the message he never sent. I'd built my anger on the idea that he'd chosen to leave, that he'd stopped caring. But what if he hadn't? Still, the timing didn't make sense. You had every chance to explain, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. You disappeared. You made me believe I didn't matter anymore. He stepped closer, his tone tightening. Because I thought I was protecting you. The word protecting lingered in the dark. Protecting me from what? Or from who? The unease in his voice made me realize this wasn't just about us, it was bigger, darker. Something else was pulling the strings. I reached for my phone, hoping for light, but the battery had died hours ago. You're not making sense, I said. What could possibly be so dangerous that you had to vanish? He didn't reply. Instead, he moved toward the window, looking out at the rain-soaked street as if expecting someone, or something, to appear. They're still watching, he murmured. That's why I came back. Because I think they've found you too. The way he said it made my stomach drop. The sound of wind outside suddenly felt different, like whispers against the glass. Was he serious? Or was this just another secret wrapped in half-truths? He turned to me then, eyes shadowed in the faint lightning glow. You're not safe anymore, he said quietly. The air thickened again, the same way it had when he first walked in. Only this time, it wasn't desire that made my heart race, it was fear. The lightning outside flashed again, brighter this time, lighting up his face just long enough for me to see the fear in his eyes. It wasn't the kind of fear that came from guilt, it was the kind that came from knowing something terrible was coming. My pulse quickened. You're scaring me, I whispered, but he didn't look at me. His gaze stayed fixed on the window, on the moving shadows beyond the rain. They've been following me for weeks, he said finally. And now? I think they've followed me here. I froze. Who are they? I asked, but he didn't answer. The air in the room grew heavier with every passing second. The only light came from the flashes outside, slicing through the dark, showing brief glimpses of his tense posture and clenched fists. He took a step closer to me, lowering his voice. Listen to me carefully, he said. If something happens tonight, don't run outside. Don't open the door for anyone. Promise me. His urgency made my chest tighten. I wanted to believe he was overreacting, that this was all in his head, but something in his voice told me it wasn't. There was a trembling truth underneath his calm. Before I could reply, a sudden noise echoed from outside, a faint thud, like a footstep on the porch. We both turned toward the door. The sound came again, heavier this time, followed by the slow creak of wood under pressure. My breath caught. It's probably the wind, I said quickly, trying to convince myself as much as him. But he shook his head. That's not the wind. He moved toward the door, but I grabbed his arm. Wait, don't, I said, my voice cracking. He looked at me, torn between fear and instinct. If they know I'm here, he whispered, they won't stop. The room felt colder now. The storm outside was louder, beating against the windows like desperate hands. Another noise, a soft knock this time, echoed through the silence. 3 times. Slow. Deliberate. He turned off his phone's flashlight and motioned for me to stay quiet. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. The knock came again, harder now. Whoever, or whatever it was, wasn't leaving. He moved closer to the door, his hand hovering just inches from the handle. The sound of rain and thunder blurred together, and for a moment, I thought I heard a voice whisper his name from the other side. He froze. Looked back at me. His face was pale, eyes wide. How do they know my name? He whispered. I didn't know what to say. All I knew was that something, or someone, was waiting on the other side of that door. The tension was unbearable, the air electric with dread. He took a slow breath, reached for the handle, and said softly, no matter what happens, don't scream. His hand hovered over the doorknob, trembling just slightly. The knock didn't come again, but the silence that followed was somehow worse. I could hear the storm outside easing up, the rain slowing to a faint drizzle, as if the whole world was holding its breath. He looked back at me one last time before turning the handle. The door creaked open just an inch, and then stopped. He froze, eyes narrowing into the darkness beyond the porch. There's no one here, he murmured. But something about his tone told me he didn't believe it. I moved closer, trying to see past him. The wind pushed through the open space, cold and sharp, carrying a faint metallic scent that made my stomach twist. He stepped outside slowly, glancing around the yard. The dim light from the street lamp flickered, casting strange, broken shadows. I waited at the doorway, calling his name softly, but he didn't respond. Then, suddenly, he bent down and picked something up from the wet floor, a small, folded piece of paper wrapped around a thin chain. When he came back inside, his face had gone pale. He shut the door quickly and locked it. What is that? I asked. He didn't answer right away. His fingers shook as he unwrapped the paper and held out what was inside, a necklace. My necklace. The one I had lost the night he disappeared. My throat tightened. How did they get that? I whispered. He looked at me, his voice quiet but urgent. That's what I'm trying to understand. Whoever's been watching me, they know everything. They've been inside your house before. The thought made me step back instinctively, my pulse hammering. Every creak in the floor suddenly felt louder. Every shadow seemed to move. You're saying they were here? I asked. He nodded once. They've been leaving signs. I thought it was just to scare me, but now it's you. Before I could respond, the lights flickered back on, flooding the room with harsh brightness. For a moment, the normalcy of light made everything feel almost safe. But then I saw it, on the wall opposite the dining table. A message, written in something dark and smeared, "You should have stayed apart." The room spun. "What is this?" I whispered, stepping back. He rushed forward, wiping part of the writing with his sleeve, but it only made it worse. The stain spread, dark and sticky, like it had been written just minutes ago. "They're not just watching," he said under his breath. "They're warning us." I could barely think straight. Questions raced through my mind. Who were they? What did they want from us? And why now, after all this time? He turned to me, eyes filled with that same mixture of fear and longing I'd seen before. "I never told you the truth about why I left," he said. "It wasn't just because of them, it was because of something I did." My heart stopped for a moment. "What did you do?" I asked, but before he could answer, a loud crash came from upstairs, a single, heavy sound like something, or someone, had fallen. We both looked up. The sound of slow footsteps followed, moving toward the stairs. He grabbed my hand instinctively, pulling me behind him. The touch was warm, desperate, trembling. "Stay close," he whispered. "Whatever happens next, don't let go." The footsteps upstairs grew heavier, each one making the wooden floor creak like it was about to give way. He tightened his grip on my hand, and for a moment, I could feel how hard his heart was pounding. The storm outside had faded completely now, leaving only the sound of our breathing and those slow, deliberate steps. He motioned for me to stay behind as he reached for the nearest thing he could use, a heavy candle holder from the table. The sound stopped suddenly, right above us. We waited, frozen in place. Then came a faint whisper, soft but clear enough to send a chill through my entire body. It said his name. He looked at me, eyes wide. "Stay here," he whispered. But before I could protest, he started up the stairs. The old steps groaned under his weight. I followed a few feet behind, unable to stop myself. The hallway above was dark, the air colder. When he reached the top, he stopped in front of my bedroom door. It was slightly open, swaying just a little, as if someone had passed through seconds ago. He pushed it slowly, the hinges creaking. The light from the hallway spilled inside, and that's when we both froze. On the bed sat a small box, wrapped in plastic, my name written across the top in thick black ink. He glanced at me before opening it. Inside was a photo, one of us from years ago, and a small note. It read, "You were never supposed to see him again." My stomach dropped. "What does this mean?" I whispered. He looked at the picture, his face pale. "It means they were never after you," he said quietly. "They were after me." Before I could ask why, a loud crack echoed from behind us. The window at the end of the hall shattered inward, scattering glass everywhere. Wind rushed through, carrying rain and something else, a faint smell of smoke. I turned toward him, panicked, but he didn't move. "They warned me this would happen if I came back," he said, his voice trembling. "But I couldn't stay away from you." The realization hit hard. All this time, he hadn't been protecting me from strangers. He had been protecting me from the consequences of something he'd done long before we met. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded letter. "If anything happens to me, read this," he said, pressing it into my hand. Before I could respond, another crash shook the house. Smoke began curling down the hallway. He turned toward the broken window, eyes full of something between guilt and relief. "This is the only way to end it," he said. Then he stepped forward, disappearing into the storm outside. I screamed his name, but the wind drowned everything out. The letter trembled in my hands. Whatever answers it held, they might change everything I thought I knew about him. The wind howled outside as I stood frozen by the shattered window, the letter clutched tightly in my hand. The storm had finally passed, but inside, everything still felt broken, quiet, cold, unreal. I stared at the door, half expecting him to walk back in, but the silence told me he wouldn't. With trembling fingers, I opened the letter. His handwriting was shaky, the ink smudged in places. "If you're reading this, it means I couldn't protect you anymore. They wanted something I took, a truth buried in the past. I never meant to drag you into it. Loving you was the one thing they couldn't control. So I did what I had to, even if it meant losing everything." My eyes blurred as I read the last line, "When you think of me, don't remember the fear. Remember the light before the storm." I folded the letter carefully, holding it close to my chest. Outside, the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon. The chaos, the fear, the unanswered questions, all of it settled into something quieter. He was gone, but somehow, I knew this wasn't the end of his story. Or mine. In the following days, I tried to piece things together. The police found no trace of him. No footprints, no sign of struggle, just the broken window and the box with my name. Some said he vanished, others said he was hiding. But deep down, I knew he had done what he believed was right. Maybe love doesn't always end in forever. Sometimes, it ends in silence, with one last act of protection. Weeks passed, and the house grew still again. Yet sometimes, when the rain fell hard against the glass, I swore I could hear his voice, a whisper of apology, a promise that love never really disappears, it just changes form. How did you feel about this ending? Would you open the letter, or let it remain a mystery forever? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below, and let me know if you'd want a sequel to uncover the truth he left behind.